Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you all today. Have a plethora of information to talk to you about today. This is joint practice, the second joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams. It was everything that I thought it would be, and there was more. And I had to work the phones, talk to a bunch of people. I wanted to get the best information. I also wanted to make sure there were some things that I saw that were accurate. Sometimes you can see things, but they're not accurate. And as you know, I love to bring you not only what happened, but the analysis around it so you can make your best decisions and your best thoughts. You may, first of all, let me just say we are booming. Please make sure if you haven't subscribed, you do that. But I want to just personally say thank you to all of you for, reading all of the articles that we write with our Raiders coverage at SI's Fan Nation, the Las Vegas Raiders today. Thank you for that. And I know you got a lot of places to go to get your information. So I just want to personally thank you all. I appreciate it. Now, on this podcast or in my writing, we never tell you what to think. Fans aren't stupid, but it's important that we give you the best analytical information so then you can draw an opinion on anything that you want. So let me quickly give you some relevancy with that. I put a tweet out at the end of practice, or it may have been in the last part of practice. I don't know. Sorry, I've been going hard. About Jimmy overthrowing a couple people. Now, there was people who said, "Oh, great, this is what he ever always does. He's not accurate." Well, let me put it in perspective for you. I have seen a lot of people talk about, well, Jimmy can't throw a deep ball. Well, I've seen him throw a lot of them and get big scores or big chunks of yardage. Well, it's no value if you don't give video. Well, okay, but we're not allowed to shoot video then. But even others have written or talked about it who are in the media corps. But he had two big misses, and I want to talk about those because we're going to come back and talk about him. But remember, I talked about analysis and relevancy. If it was just Jimmy overthrew two, okay, so he had a couple of bad throws. Let me just say, he had a terrific practice. He had one throw that was way over a guy's head, but I put that out there specifically for the people offering the false narrative that he doesn't have the arm strength to go deep, because I've watched him lots of times do it. But it was a wide receiver that had gotten held, and Jimmy just sailed the ball. I don't think Jimmy saw that the guy was held, because what happened was is the play was to the left. Jimmy made his first reads, which I've explained. You remember there's a pre-snap read. So when you come to the line, let's say the play is maybe going to be a flag route on the left. So the quarterback comes up and looks. Are they in single? Are they in dime? Are they in nickel defense? Are they in cover two? What are they in? So maybe the read that you look over there and say, okay, that the defense they're showing me, that's not going to be a good read. So he looks and wants to see who's open or what's going to be available, or is it in the slot? Is it an RPO, which means a run pass option, where maybe, okay, I'm going to hand it off. He makes all of his reads. The ball snapped. Now, when you talk about first, second, third reads, there's the post snap version of that, because sometimes defenses will hide what they're doing. So Jimmy's looking. And I say that like he held the ball 25 minutes. No, it was maybe a second and a tenth, not long, but in a quarterback, that's a long time. Looks, goes to his third read, which he knows this is a route. Now, sometimes you'll hear, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So anyways, he's taken off and he sees it and he launches it because he knows the route the guy is supposed to be on. Now, the guy was held and Jimmy's throwing to a spot, but the guy was held. But he's still, I put the emphasis out there because of his critics who say he can't throw a deep ball, which is just stupid. Now, secondly, on the other deep ball, it was what some coaches call it a 9 route, which is just a straight go to the end zone. Some coaches call it a 7 because you want to get the touchdown. So again, depending on the regime or how a person looks at it, it's a 7 route. And the guy's going on a 7 route. Jimmy's under pressure and he launches it to get rid of it. He doesn't hold the ball too long, which is great. And he puts the ball in a place where either the receiver's going to get it or it's going to be incomplete. It's not going to be intercepted. And on this one, he sailed it and the guy didn't get to it. Now, I can't put all that in a tweet. And the purpose of the tweet was specifically to address people that said he can't throw the deep ball, that he doesn't have the arm strength. The point is, when you look at both of those, they're now completely understandable. You don't want a quarterback who's going to throw the ball too long and get sacked or fumbled. And then you don't want a quarterback who at least isn't going to give an opportunity to make a play. And so, the worst scenario comes out of this is you have an incompletion. Best scenario is a catch and a score. So again, it was not a neither one of those was a bad situation. So when you hear just the analysis, he overthrew 2 deep balls, then you hear that's what he did for San Francisco. But when you get the analysis and the ancillary information, you now can understand neither one of those is a negative. So there's a lot to talk about. We got to talk about Jimmy today because he did have a really big day. We're going to talk about red zone. We're going to get into so much today. Just hold on to your hat. If you like ball, if you love football, and you love the Raiders or whatever, you're going to really enjoy this podcast. And again, thanks for joining us. So let's get right to it. Nate Hobbs was back in practice today, and he really looked really good. I noticed from him his lateral movement. I was wondering how that was going to be, and his lateral movement was very, very good. He does a terrific job of moving laterally, and today he did, and it showed. Now, last year was an utter joke. The Raiders tried to make him an outside corner, and that's not who he is. It's just not who he is. And credit them because they're like, okay, it didn't work. They put him back in the slot, and he looks great in the slot. And so his lateral movement was tremendous today. Sure, there was a few things that were rusty, but it was extremely good on his behalf. And I thought it was impressive. I thought he had a very good day, made some very big plays. Couple plays. Well, I'm going to get to those in a minute. Next, let's talk about Cole Fotheringham. This guy had a very good practice yesterday, and I want you to know my job's to bring you all the analysis, and I had it in my notes. I have no idea what happened. I just for some reason skipped it. It was not intentional. Cole had a really good day yesterday, and he had a good day today as well. I think yesterday was even better, but he was impressive. Now, remember, the purpose of this podcast today is reflecting practice. Tomorrow's is going to be what I'm looking for. We're going to talk about Cole Fotheringham a lot. He has looked good. And I also want to remind you that after the game, I will have a podcast reflecting on it. And then on Monday morning, I'm going to have a podcast giving you my new projected 53-man roster. And there are multiple changes. So I really encourage you, make sure you check out these podcasts every day. Monday's the change in the 53-man is going to be really good. Now, if you know, I don't I get as much information and help as I can on the 53-man. So you're going to make sure you want to watch that. Saturday, of course, will be the recap. And then Sunday will be my new projected 53-man roster. I am not yet today ready to make a call on Fotheringham. I think I know where it's going, and we'll find out on Monday. Excuse me, I apologize. Now, I want to talk about Andre James, Colton Miller, and Greg Van Roten. They looked so good in one-on-one reps today. I mean, the Raiders' offensive line, I thought was good yesterday. Don't think it was great. I thought it was good. And today they were even better. But those three today had big reps. And Greg Van Roten has probably had on the offensive line, him and Colton Miller have been the two best offensive linemen. I mean, you guys know this since they signed him. I was a big Van Roten guy before he got here. I think this was a brilliant hire or a signing, however you want to look at it. And that guy is the part. He is now. You go back and watch my interview from last week with Max Crosby. Not the one yesterday, but the few days before. Van Roten isn't a dirty player, but he's mean. He's got a little bit of nasty in him now, and he's so much fun to watch. Just so much fun to watch, and he's a great person, just an absolutely great guy. But he is a football player now. That guy, I would expect him to be in a leather helmet. I would almost bet that the moment he retires and he's not getting paid to play football, he's going to join some, beer league team. He's going to do something now because he's a competitor, and he is just a lot of fun to watch. But Colton has looked everything you want Colton Miller to be. Van Roten the other day called him the most underrated tackle. In fact, you're going to see an interview with Van Roten tomorrow. We're going to have a ton of video up tomorrow. I mean, we're going to have highlights from the practices that you can watch and a bunch of players. I mean, so again, lots of video tomorrow, tons of it. So make sure you're checking that. Will probably pop up around noon Eastern. I would guess could be as late as 1:30 Eastern, but 10:30 on the West Coast, but somewhere in there. But make sure you watch that Van Roten interview. But even he talks about Colton Miller is one of the most underrated tackles in the National Football League. Andre James, great at the point of attack. Now, a lot of people don't understand this. So if you do understand it, forgive me. I'm not insulting your intelligence. But most offensive linemen, the ball snap, when it snaps. So maybe it's on color or it's on a number, whatever. Could be on a word. And so the ball snap and your hands come up and you're ready to take on the defender. The center has to hike the ball, then get his hands up. So it is a very difficult thing to be a center in the National Football League because normally you got a humongous guy right over your nose or in the gap to your right or left, or sometimes two of them in the gap. You got to hike the ball and wham, get your hands up really quick. I mean, it's just boom, ready to go. And so it is a thing of beauty when you watch. Now, there were two great centers on the field today. Brian Allen, the starting center for the Rams, and in the interest of full disclosure, not being braggadocious, but when I talk about people that I have a good personal relationship with, I always tell you that because in case you want to consider whether or not I'm biased. I don't believe I am. Brian's one of the most respected centers in the National Football League. He's a lot like Van Roten. He plays with a lot of mean. I'm very close with him. His brothers, Matt and Jack, great friends. Love his parents. The whole family's great people. But there were two great centers, just that quick. Now, Brian gets it because he was just a tremendous high school wrestler. Andre gets it because he's extremely athletic. And a lot of people don't understand the athleticism it takes to play center in this league. So Andre James, I mean, it was just all day. And he was in rare form. He looked good. In fact, next time I talk to him, I'm going to ask him because it's been very evident this camp. I thought he was good last year. He's been extremely good with his hands. It is so much fun. It's like a work of art. A great offensive line is like watching have you ever been to New York City, Radio City Music Hall to watch the Rockettes? And yes, they're pretty women. I'm not talking about that, but just the way that they're all synchronized. A great offensive line is an absolute thing of pure abject beauty. You could go to Paris to the Louvre and see a lot of things that you would say, oh, that's pretty, that's art, but none of them, I guarantee nothing is as pretty as an offensive line. And when you watch the way that James just snaps it, very impressive today. I watched that a lot, and I didn't see Van Roten, Miller, or Andre James lose one rep in one-on-one drills. They were really good. Now it was really funny. Muti, the Raiders offensive lineman, he goes up against Aaron Donald, first rep. I mean, the joint part has just started, first rep, and Aaron Donald got the best of him. Now hold on a minute. Before you start making a judgment against Moody, there are a very few people in the National Football League, one-on-one with Aaron Donald, that aren't going to look silly. It's like saying a guy went up against Max Crosby and looks silly. Everybody does. You go up against Devontae, he makes everyone look silly. I mean, Marcus Peters is a really good corner, and Marcus Peters can't guard Devontae. So this is not a pick on Muti, but so I mean, Donald drives him, takes him on, he goes down to the ground. There's no shame in that game. Is that even a saying anymore? Sorry, I'm old, so that was a saying when I was a kid. But anyways, and Moody gets up, man, he pushed back. Like, okay, you want to go that hard? And I loved it. I absolutely. It's just like when Cam Akers went hard, so Max Crosby went hard back at him. And Mike said, okay, you want to go that way? You got what you got. And Moody got beat, but he showed toughness. And I was impressed. And neither one of them. And that was really the only skirmish. And there just shouldn't be skirmishes here. This should just be go out there and play football. And I think there's no coincidence. The only skirmish yesterday had Max, and the only skirmish today had Aaron Donald. Two guys that play with that level of toughness. It was fun. But I was proud of Muti there. Okay, so again now, overall, I want to talk about the Raiders' offensive line. I think that the Rams certainly got some good plays in. No doubt about it. And it wasn't a blowout, dominant thing. But I do believe the Raiders' offensive line looked better than the Rams' defensive line. That does not mean the Rams did not make plays. They did. But the Raiders' offensive, I mean, especially when you looked and you had Colton in there. I mean, now let me just go here. I'll just say this. The Raiders' ones looked exceptionally good against the Rams ones, not named Aaron Donald. But, the Raiders did some double teaming, chipped a guy. They did a lot of really smart stuff. And so they were able to, Donald still did his stuff, but he wasn't like a Max was. I mean, the Rams had no answer for Max Crosby. I mean, a donut sitting on this table next to me had a better chance of surviving than anybody trying to guard Max Crosby. I mean, he just made him look stupid. It was a men among boys. And again, he's an Aaron Donald type. So that isn't, and Brian Allen, my friend, plays on the offensive line of the Rams, and that's no insult to them. It's just the reality. Just like nobody really had answers against Aaron Donald. I mean, he's just that good. And so you got to do things. And the Raiders did. They doubled. They did some chipping, which I think really helped. The Rams tried, and it just didn't stop Max. I mean, at one point, I was with Levi Edwards. I think it was Levi. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. It could have been Logan Reaver from Channel 8 in Vegas. Or again, I was with somebody. I think it was with Levi, though. Or maybe Kevin Miller from Channel 5. But we're standing there, and we were laughing because in 4 straight reps, Max did 4 different moves. It's just Max. I mean, in baseball, you call a guy, a 5-tool player or a 4-tool player. I'm not a big baseball guy, so forgive me. If he can do every part of the game, well, that's Max. There's nothing on the defensive line he cannot do. And I'll get more into that when I do my pod at the end of camp and everything with my season predictions, not just the record, which you already know how I feel, but other stuff. So overall, I thought the offensive line looked really good. The defensive line, I would have, by the way, I would have given the Raiders offensive line probably a B minus. So it's really good. And the defensive line an A plus, absolute A plus. And I'll have more to say about them in a minute. But when I get to the corners, but the offensive line, it was not. I mean, excuse me, the defensive line was not even close. Just it was a complete dominant. At one point, in fact, I left because I wanted to go see if there was something more interesting going on the offensive side because the Raiders defense. Now that's the ones. The twos look just as good as well. Maybe not just as good. Maybe I'd give them an A. In the threes, I'd give an A minus. That's pretty doggone good. And the offensive line just looked tremendous. Now, I want to talk about Max Crosby a little bit. I know I've mentioned him a lot. I always do. But I tweeted this out, a picture of Max. They were now you have to understand there's two fields. And if you go look at my story at Sports Illustrated, you'll actually see the picture of the two fields and where I stood. So you got two fields, and I'm standing here watching offense on this side, defense on this side. And I'm just sitting there watching Max. So they go to specials practice. And what that means is on the left, the Raiders are doing punt receive, and on the right, they're doing punts. And so they're in special teams. Now, this is normally where the big guys, the big uglies, and the other guys, and I mean that with total affection, the big uglies. They go and they're getting water and they're resting because it's hot. I mean, it's not hot like it is in Vegas, but it's still hot. And it's more humidity here. And they instead, Max goes over and grabs Tyree Wilson, and I put a picture of it up. And it was really cool just watching Max give him some lessons, some thoughts. And here's what I think is really cool. Here's Tyree. Now, he's a high pick, 7th overall. Not all, but a lot of those guys have just monster egos. And here's a guy picked a lot higher than Max. He could have came in with an ego. And trust me, y'all maybe don't believe this, but I've seen it a lot. And he's just soaking it up. I put a lot of video out on my Twitter today of Tyree doing some drills. Again, he didn't get into any of the game type situations at all. He just worked individuals, but man, he just looks like granite, and he is long. He can bend. Someone asked me one time, Hondo, when you talk about guys can bend, what do you mean? I mean he can just contort his body. He can make himself. In Vegas, there is a show that my wife and I like to go to. It's called the V Variety Show. It's in the Mile of Malls, or whatever they Mile of Mall or a Mile Mall. It's near the Hard Rock. And if in this show they have all these different acts, and the best, by the way, is the magician Jason Byrne, but that's a side story. They have these guys who just and this lady who just contort their body in ways that you would think is just physically impossible. And when you watch the way Tyree can bend to just get his shoulder. Now, see, when you're coming out of a defensive end, that left tackle's trying to square you up. He's trying to get his hands here on you. He wants to stay square with you. So if you can bend that shoulder down, or maybe bend and then flip, and you can get him off, you can get to the quarterback. Tyree Wilson can bend in ways. I mean, my son is one. Yes, I'm 52 with a 1-year-old son. And love him. Anyways, Tyree can just bend in ways that even the French gymnastics judge, is anybody else old enough to appreciate that analogy, would have to give the guy 10. And so watching him with Max and his ability to listen and to learn is very impressive. Extremely impressive. Okay. Now, I want to talk about Jimmy G, because he in the red zone really looked good. And I have to give a caveat. Remember, I told you yesterday there was some national media being critical of Raiders in the red zone. And I heard that same national media person being critical again today. The problem is, and this is what I talked about, analysis without analyzation of the entire situation is not smart. Now, remember, I talked about Jimmy at the beginning. The Raiders stayed extremely generic in the red zone. I can tell you that I talked with people, got it confirmed. They did not show one thing today or yesterday that's part of their new concepts in the red zone. Nothing. So can you say they weren't as effective as probably they wanted to be? Absolutely. But with the caveat that they were extremely vanilla, when you go and look at some of those early games, they're going to be facing more than one team early who's similar to a defensive style to the Rams. So you really don't want to show anything. You really want to be super careful. And you don't know if a player on the Rams is friends with a player on the Broncos or the Bills or any early team on the schedule. So you just have to be the Steelers. You just have to be careful. And so, yes, were they as effective in the red zone as they want to be? No. Were they vanilla and showed nothing? Absolutely. I am told, and I believe it because of the person who told me, they're going to do a lot more work on red zone once the regular season starts, because then there's practices with no media and fans and things they're going to work on. And they've worked on a lot of it in the classroom, just not on the field where people are there to watch. So again, Jimmy had one drive, 6 for 6 with a touchdown. Then in hurry up, multiple scores. I don't remember how many touchdown passes he had today. I believe it was 5 or 6. And so I'm not making excuses for him. I thought I told you yesterday, I thought he had a good day. I thought he had a better day today when you're able to analyze and understand why did the 2 deep passes go deep. And I think both of those are germane. And then if you look at maybe some concerns with red zone, I can't give specifics, okay, because you have to understand part of our agreement as part of the Pro Football Writers Association is we get access and we can't talk about schematics, okay, which is fair because that's why there's certain times we can't film because you don't want to give an advantage to anyone's opponent. So there is something new that I know that they're planning to do in the red zone. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to hint at it because it would be unfair to the Raiders and unfair to the people that talk to me. That I know for a fact in red zone would have destroyed the Rams. Now, you don't have to believe me. That's fine. But I think you're going to see it when the season starts. And when it happens, I'll make note of it on Twitter or in a podcast, I'm sure, just so you can go back and DVR it and remember this. But I thought it was very fascinating. And so when you understand, okay, they were good in the red zone. They were better than the Rams in the red zone. Were they, was it a 49-0 blowout? No. But the Rams were doing some unique things, and they had no answers for the Raiders' defensive line, but the Raiders didn't. I mean, and the Raiders didn't. So that I think that's a little bit for you to understand. Now, I want to talk about at the end of practice. I thought this was really cool. So the Raiders are driving down the field, the last drive. And remember now, I'm facing straight ahead. So this would be to my right, to you looking at me, your left. And Matthew Stafford throws a touchdown pass against the Raiders. Well, there was Raiders 2s and 3s in there. And on the right, Jimmy's driving down Raiders 1s on 1s, and he throws this beautiful touchdown pass to Davante Adams. And he catches it. Great catch. The Raiders are going crazy, and ref all of a sudden rules it out of bounds. Now, here's the cool part. Go back and watch the video, or I'm going to put a video up later today, maybe up before this, of Jimmy Garoppolo. And the first question I said to him, hey, you overthrew a couple of passes. Or actually, the first question I said to him is, hey, what about Davante's catch? Was it a catch? And the first thing he says to me is, hey, yes, it was. And we went and watched the film. So as soon as it was over, the Raider players were like asking their film people, and they're like, yep, touchdown. So if it would have been reviewed, it would have been a touchdown. I wasn't even counting that in Jimmy's touchdowns, by the way. I forgot that one. But it was fun to watch. And again, relevancy, who was it against? So that's a very, very important note. Now, I want to talk about Brian Hoyer. And I know this is his 15th year. And a lot of people, well, we don't need him. He's in year 15. Well, let me tell you something. He knows the system perfectly. And he almost came here last year. In fact, I'm going to tell you more about that on my podcast after the 53-man roster is announced. But when I talk about Brian, all of camp has looked exceptional. And on top of it, teaching Aiden. He's been great. He had some throws today. I mean, into some tight windows. He had a super long touchdown pass. But remember, the Josh McDaniels offense is predicated on that bubble from 7 to 25 yards. You want to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers and then let them go for yak yards after the catch. Every once in a while, you go down the field because it keeps the defense honest, but that's not part of the scheme. And Brian looked exceptional well. And I'm going to tell you what, I thought Aiden O'Connell, I thought he was good yesterday. I think I gave him a C+. He was better than that today. I thought Jimmy was an A-. I thought Brian Hoyer was an A, and I thought Aiden O'Connell was an A. Now, remember, level of competition is a little bit different. Now, not so much for Brian, although he does go against 1s and 2s, and Aiden goes against 2s and 3s. Jimmy just goes against 1s. But still, I thought the Raiders quarterbacks, I mean, they really had a great camp. Now, I've had people asking me, but what happens if Jimmy goes down in the second game? I think Hoyer comes in. Jimmy goes down in week 10, 12, and they think Aiden's ready, then I think maybe they do go to the young guy, depending on the record. If the Raiders are still in it and competing, I think they would go to Brian. Matter of fact, yes, I think they'd go to Brian. I don't need to say anymore. But I mean, the Raiders quarterback room is super talented. I think Raider Nation needs to be encouraged about that. One time today, I saw Aiden O'Connell hold the ball too long, and he got sacked. He threw the ball and completed it, but I don't count it because the quarterbacks can do that. In fact, a lot. We'll get to that in just a second. Nesta has had a really good camp. In fact, I saw him make several big plays, 2 of them throwing his defender to the ground. And I missed another one that Levi Edwards of Raiders.com told me about. But it was that guy's playing himself in. Make sure you check out Sunday's podcast when I give you my new projected 53. I think you're going to be interested in what I have to say about Nesta. But he's having a really good camp. He's just physical. I mean, he's physical. And I mean, he plays that game the way it's supposed to be played. Just gets in there and he's just a beast. But he tears some stuff up now. I really like him against the run. And I've been pleasantly surprised. I knew he was really good at the point attack against the run. In fact, I told you that the night they drafted him. I have been pleasantly surprised at his rushing. I mean, as a pass rusher, he's had a really, really good camp. Now they've had a lot of guys have really good camps. John Jenkins today, that guy was a beast. He was causing issues. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to have a video up of an interview I did with him today. Make sure you watch that video. Just trust me. Make sure you watch it. I asked him about it. So he picks up the fumble, runs 10 yards, and stops. Now, smaller guys. Now, I'm a big dude here. So when I talk about big uglies, I am including myself in that. We're going to maybe get the ball, run 10 yards, and stop. Why should I go run 60 more to prove I scored a touchdown? But it was fun watching him. He made a great play. Fumble, gets forced, picks it up, runs 10 yards, stops, comes back. But John Jenkins was a beast. There wasn't one guy in the defensive line that had a bad day. Not one. And so everybody on that defensive line had a really, really good day. Now, I want to go back because I just talked about Aiden, where he got sacked the one time he held the ball too long. And I said, he did step up, throw the ball, and complete it, but I'm not going to count it. The Raiders outside on the outside corners have struggled. But again, they're struggling with, the defensive line is getting all this pressure. And then, Stafford steps up and throws after what would have been a sack. So, matter of fact, I'm going to have a video up tomorrow of an interview with Trayvon Moehrig, and I asked him about it. He kind of laughed. He goes, well, yeah, but we're still supposed to cover him. Yeah, well, how long are you supposed to cover him for? Good night, Irene. But anyways, so again, I think, and you all know I like Matt, but I think he probably looked a little bit better than he was because of that, just because of the Raiders' defensive line was brutal. So there were some turnovers today, but not as many as there had been. I saw 3 or 4, not the usual 7 or 8, but I saw 3 or 4. Yeah, 3 or 4. One of them I'm questioning because a fumble was forced, and I thought the receiver had control of it, but it was close. So I'm going to say 3 or 4. Again, though, the Raiders punching out the ball, going after the ball. There was visible frustration with the Rams at the Raider aggression to create turnovers. Now, to their credit, I thought the Rams had a really good practice. I thought they were good yesterday. I thought they were very good today. If you're a Ram fan, you should be really excited about this team. I think a lot of us who sold them down the river as this was going to be a bad year for them, we were wrong. I think based on what I saw, I think they're going to be pretty good. So again, I wanted to go back and address that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of guys who I thought have looked okay, but needed to do more. And I've said it yesterday in the pod. 2 UDFAs, Dalton Wagner and McClendon Curtis. By the way, make sure Sunday you check out my new projected 53-man roster. Find out where those two sit. Those two looked really good today. Did they get beat? Yep. But they're 2 UDFA rookies, and they won more than they got beat. And they were getting reps against 2s and some 3s that are going to make the Rams roster. So I was very impressed. Both those guys, in my opinion, had very good days. Not perfect. I would have given McClendon a B and Wagner a B+. So again, I thought those were very, very good days for them. I want to address Marcus Peters for a minute, because I'm going to pick the right words because it's important to have the right words. I am very impressed with him. Again, just made some plays today that were so good. But what really impresses me with him, Greg Van Roten, Philip Dorsett, Jacoby Myers, John Jenkins, Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane. Now, remember, I'm going to have a long form article coming between the end of the preseason and the beginning of the season. I have two of them coming. One is on Josh McDaniels' secret weapon. The other is on Dave Ziegler and how Dave rebuilt this roster in 2023. And they wanted quarterbacks for their defense, but they wanted leaders who led. A lot of guys can be veterans, but being a veteran doesn't mean you're a leader, because being a leader requires extra work. Being a leader is Max Crosby when he's got a chance to go get a drink of water and relax because he goes like a Tasmanian devil, grabbing the young rook, Tyree Wilson, and giving him pointers. I mean, there's a cost to leadership. And these guys are all doing it. Now, I told you before, I always liked Marcus Peters, always liked Greg Van Roten, always liked John Jenkins, Robert Spillane, Marcus Epps. I think I mentioned Van Roten, but if I didn't, I'll mention him again. Jacoby Myers, always been a big Jacoby guy. And Dave Ziegler went out and got this group of new dogs. Now, here's what's important. Colton Miller has always done this. Max Crosby does this. Chandler Jones does this. Dylan Parham, who's a sophomore, does this. So the Raiders had some good leaders. But they purposely in free agency said, we got a really young team. We need to get some leaders in here who are quarterbacks, who are dudes. There's a saying in the NFL, that guy's a dude. And what that literally means is he's great at what he does, but he's great in the locker room. He's great in teaching. He sets the example for how do you be a pro. And to me, I wrote about this, but these old new dogs are teaching some of these young pups how to be pros. You want them. You want your young guys. Now, for example, I'm a parent. I want my kids to hang around with good people. Why? Because you become like what you hang around with. Let me tell you who you are. Okay, show me who you hang around with. Facts. And so, anyways, I just impressed. And I like Marcus. I know some people that played with him who really liked him. But his humility has really impressed me. Not because I thought he was a bad guy. I just never got to see that side of his game, and I loved it. And I just think those guys are they are the biggest reason. The Coltons, the Maxes, they needed help. The Raiders just did not have great leaders everywhere last year, and it hurt this team. I'm going to get into a lot of it with the long form article with Dave Ziegler, and so I won't get into it right now. And so they went out and got their good leaders help, and it shows, and it shows in a big way. Next, I want to talk about the Hunter Renfrow. That guy is rejuvenated. And he was very honest that last year probably wasn't his best. He's been very honest about needing to do better. We'll leave that there. I really like him as a person and a man and a player. But you keep hearing me brag about Jacoby. It's really the same with Hunter. I mean, Devontae, Jacoby, Hunter. And I'm going to throw, Trey Tucker's coming. He's a rook, so he's coming. But, you got Devontae, you got Jacoby, you got Hunter. Then you got the rook, who has, come a long ways. DeAndre Carter has looked really good. But I'm going to give you another guy. And it wasn't out there today, but this guy's had a great camp. I really like this guy, both as a player and a human being. But that's Philip Dorsett. He wasn't out there today, Now, usually I give you, like, I'll tell you, I'm hearing it's this kind of injury, that kind of injury. I've heard nothing on Dorsett. So I don't know if it's major. I don't know if it's minor. Um, I don't think it's major at all. I saw him go down and I saw him get up. But I'm not in any way reporting that as facts. I'm reporting you what my eyes saw. The other things I've reported you, I'm telling you what I was told and fact based. But with Philip, I don't have any report on that other than what when I saw him get up, it certainly looked like he was sore. And I believe because that guy is a competitor, um, I believe they're just being super cautious. But those guys, Hunter, all of them are just are really tearing it up. So again, what did I tell you I wanted to see coming down here? I wanted to see the Raiders be consistent. Yesterday they were consistent. They were winning, but they weren't as good as they had been. I told you that how Max went out and addressed it. You guys saw a lot of the videos where Max talked about it. And I think it was important that he do. Today they responded, man. They came out on fire. And again, credit the Rams. Now, I think the Raiders are a better team than the Rams. And so they should have won, in my opinion. But I thought the Rams came out. If I was a Ram fan, and I'm not, now I'm not a Raider fan either. I'm just giving you my report. But if I was a Raider fan, I'd be super encouraged. I'd be fired up. Your team continues to just remain consistent. If I was a Ram fan, I would be extremely excited, probably more than the Raiders, because I thought the Rams were going to be worse than the Raiders, and they certainly competed. So again, the Raiders, I've been telling you all offseason, I thought if Jimmy stays healthy 17 games, they would win 9. I'm not changing that opinion yet. Doesn't mean I won't. We're going to wait to the end of camp. Doesn't mean I will either. But so this is the Raiders I expected to see. I was a little surprised yesterday, and I told you, no, I was not a little. It was gigantically surprised that when they were still winning, they were angry. I really like that. In fact, watch the interview I did today with Josh McDaniels because I talked to him about that. But I thought that was really good, and I think both teams come away with this with a lot, which is what you want in joint practices. They both learned a lot. I think the Raiders won both days. So I don't, again, tomorrow's podcast, we'll get into more of what to look for in the game. But I'll just say for now, Raiders won both days. If I had to say yesterday, I'd say a 24-21 win. And if I had to say today, I'd say 28-17, 28-14, something like that. I think the Raiders won it. Going, a good win. Probably 28. Yeah, probably 28-17. I thought it was a really good day for the Raiders. Now, here is the thing that I think you need to come away the most excited about with. Yeah, Dorsett went down, but again, I don't think it's serious. That's my opinion. I haven't been able to get to anyone to get an analysis on that yet, so I hope to have more probably Saturday night about that. But they come away with no major injuries, and that's huge. So they're this far into camp. There are some injuries, but nothing, earth shattering. And nothing that I, as of now, think is anywhere close to long term. So they're not only winning and staying consistent, they're staying healthy. Now, this is the last point I want to make, but it's a very important point. You have to credit Josh McDaniels for that. There was a couple times today that these joint practices could have gotten away from him. And he just had the team in control. Now, I'm going to say this, and you need to know, I've told you before, I mean, I grew up respecting the Raiders, but not a Raider fan per se. Loved them, enjoyed watching them, liked them. But how many times have you watched the Raiders with stupid penalties? Last year, the year before, I'm covering the team 4 years. It's but it's plagued them going back to my childhood. Now, they used to be so good that they could have all the penalties and still win. It's not the case anymore. And I've seen games where I've put on there the Raiders are good enough to beat XYZ, but not good enough to beat XYZ and themselves. And you can see the discipline. They're staying disciplined. And I'm going to talk about this in my prediction thread, my prediction podcast coming up before the season starts. I'm going to address this. I believe if it continues to what I'm seeing, this is probably going to be one of the least penalized Raider teams in a decade, and maybe even farther back. Just the discipline's there. They get it. And I think there was a couple situations where Josh, now he would never admit this, but he did admit to me this morning, and you can watch the video, that him and Sean McVay talked last night about some certain things they wanted to do. And there were a couple times today where you could see it was a Raider reaction to something away from getting into something. Didn't happen. I thought that was brilliant. And I'm going to end with this. Many of you know I'm very good friends with Matt Millen, a Raider legend. You guys know him as a great Raider legend, and I have the privilege of knowing him as a dear friend, and a brother I share very strong faith with in the Lord. And so I love Matt and love him dearly. And he was at practice today, and I, many of you know he almost passed away a few years ago, got a heart transplant. And so several of you, because you know closeness to Matt, asked me how he's doing. And it was great. Just he's feeling great. His family's doing great. I love his family, precious people. And but he's gained some weight back. He looked good. And that was special to me. And thank God, because we certainly prayed for him a lot. And for those of you that are Raider fans, I know that you love him because he's a great Raider. And for those of us that love him as a friend, it was just a really good day to see him, to hug his neck, and remind him of how much I love him, and to see that God was gracious and answered our prayers, and he's gained weight. He looked good. So tip of the hat to you, Matt. You know I love you, and I'm so happy. Any day I wake up, Matt Millen's still on this earth is a very good day for the Carpenter family. Love you, buddy. So again, thank you all for watching. And I just want to thank you. Tens of thousands of you are tuning into this podcast. You're reading our articles, and I can't thank you enough. And I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, there are a lot of great people that cover the Raiders. I certainly am not the only one, and I don't think I am. But it is really cool that you choose to come here. We don't take you for granted. We're not entitled to you watching and reading and listening. I got to earn it every day. And every day when I do, that's one of the prayers I pray is, Lord, help me to give these people the best information to the best of my ability. And I thank you guys that you are clicking and watching and reading and listening. And I just want you to know it means the world to me, and I'm grateful for you. So make sure you subscribe and share this if you can. But from all of us at Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network, thank you for watching. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, what to look for in the big game coming up on Saturday. Have a great night, everybody. God bless you.